Hello everyone, am I audible? So we have to start with American Revolution and we have to start with French Revolution, and then we have to make note of philosophers today, right? So when we talk about the topic of French Revolution, which is 1789, right? Now, what kind of questions we expect in French Revolution? Number one, it will be causes of French Revolution, right? Then after causes, there is a very important topic which is consequences of French Revolution, right? In between, there is another topic now, that is nature of French Revolution. Along with this, then we have to talk about the ideas of philosophers. And tomorrow in our next class, we will be talking about Napoleon. Now, this topic is the one which I must dictate and I'm going to dictate. But when I talk about Napoleon, because there are so many things in Napoleon, we have to talk about 10 things about Napoleon, and everything ends up being an independent question in which we need to know every point. So for that part, I will give you slides, right? That I will not dictate, that I will explain through slides, but I will explain in such a detailed way that every word will be discussed through the slides. All right? चलो let's start. पहले मैं थोड़ी सी स्टोरी बताता हूँ and then we will write. Now when we talk about causes, for every revolution there are going to be political, social, economic, and then philosophical or intellectual causes. So we have to discuss about the political causes, social causes, economic and philosophical causes of French Revolution. Now when I try to explain you before I dictate these, so when I talk about French Revolution and causes, if I say there are political causes, what are these political causes? In France, whosoever is the king, as at this time it is Louis the 16th. All right. So when we talk about the king still believes in absolute rule, right? So people of France have now an example from USA, and they do not want absolute king to rule over them. So obviously they will revolt against this king. Similarly, it is still that the nobility in France is very powerful. When nobility is powerful, in that case, we say that it is aristocratic system. What is aristocratic system? Where the high offices are based on birth. If I am born in the family of a feudal lord, I will get the important offices. So people of France are not happy with absolute monarchy, nor they are happy with the aristocratic system of their political setup. So that is why they are ready to revolt against such an oppressive regime. I've given you example of 2. While writing, dictating, I will give you 4 or 5. Then when I talk about social causes of French Revolution, the French society was exactly that feudal age society which was divided into 3 estates. 3 estates. Now, what were these 3 estates? First one was the church authorities, clergy. Then there was nobility, the political or the military bosses, and then there were commoners. These 2 classes, the church and the nobility, they were the privileged class, contributing only 2% of the population, while 98% were commoners, and they had no rights. Now, because of this social division into a privileged and ordinary people, there was a social conflict. People were not happy, and the king was not ready to change the system because he depended on the support of the privileged class. Now, if I talk about economic causes, there was no industrialization in France. Even agriculture in France was very backward, and king has paid no attention either to improve agriculture or to set up industries. So economically, France was very backward. In this backward society, the taxes were very high. So obviously people will not be happy to pay so much of the taxes when there is no development at all, right? And now that the king is asking for more taxes after American War of Independence, the people obviously will revolt. Why? Because only common people have to pay the taxes. The privileged classes are not to pay any taxes. They are exempted from the taxation system. So these commoners are now saying, can we change the political system from absolute monarchy to a kind of democracy so that we common people get the right to decide that what kind of taxes are to be imposed or not? That is why economic causes and the issue of taxes is very important. Now, when I talk about intellectual causes, we have to understand two things. And please try to be very attentive for the second thing. First is simple. Second, you have to be very attentive for. When I talk about intellectual causes, France has the best of the best philosophers, Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau. They had been inspiring the people of France for quite some time, almost more than 50 years. So people of France were inspired by the writings of these philosophers. But if in our exam they ask us a question, now this is the second part which I want you to be attentive to. If they ask, what was the role of philosophers in French Revolution? The role of philosophers is very important. It is very crucial, but it is indirect. Why it is indirect? Had there been no political problems, no social problems, no economic problems, then what would have they highlighted? If everything would have been good, then how could there be these writers writing anything? And if everything would have been good and they still try to find problems unnecessarily and kept on writing, who would have bothered about their writings? Had there not been social, economic, and political problems, one writer himself said, if there would have been no problems, the writings of these philosophers would have fallen on deaf ears. कोई सुनता नहीं इनकी बात, यार क्या बकवास कर रहे हो? We don't believe in what you are saying because we think politically everything is good, socially everything is good, economically everything is good. So why should we believe what you are saying and why should we revolt against the king? So the role of philosophers is important, but it is indirect. It requires the direct existence of economic, social, and political causes. Only then intellectuals can play any important role. So let's start writing. First, let's start with introduction. The French Revolution of 1789 the French Revolution of 1789 was a greatly significant event. Greatly significant event which left a lasting impact. Which left a lasting impact on the history of not only France, but entire Europe, as well as the world. Make a second point for this introduction. It was not a sudden event. It is not that one fine day people found something problematic and they all of a sudden started a revolt. It was not a sudden event. Rather, it was a product of the prevailing circumstances and the evil practices. evil practices. Now, this is introduction and background to our French Revolution. Now, let's start with the causes. In causes, number one, politico-administrative causes. Politico-administrative causes. Number one, the French polity was monarchical in system. The French polity was monarchical in system, where king claimed semi-divine status. King claimed semi-divine status. Now, what is semi-divine status? King is trying to tell the people that I am a representative of the God. So I should be treated in a divine way and nobody should ask me a question. Rather, nobody should dare ask me a question. Right? And I hope you understand one thing. If a king is very powerful, very smart, who can solve most of the problems of the people, people still can respect him as a divine authority. But if king is very weak and he cannot solve the problems, rather because of his policies, the problem starts to increase, then people will lose the faith that he can be divine. And exactly this happened in France. Before this revolution, the kings who were ruling in France, like the kings are always Louis, Louis, they just keep changing their numbers. From 1 to 18, we have Louis 18, right? So Louis 14th, Louis 15th, they still were very strong. They could manage the things very efficiently. But Louis 16th was a very weak king and he always failed in this or that way while making policies. So now people have lost faith in this divine idea of kingship. So they got ready to revolt, right? Second point. This is subpoint to the first one. The idea of royal absolutism. The idea of royal absolutism, that means kings have absolute power. The idea of royal absolutism was still popular in France. The idea of royal absolutism was still popular in France. So a king believes he is God. That's why he claim absolute power. But if he is not strong enough, then people will not respect him. Rather, they will be ready to revolt. Second main point. Even though there existed an institution called States General. States General. Now, what is States General? There are 3 states. That means there is one body in which the representatives of 3 states will come, sit and discuss the issues with the king. It is kind of a parliamentary association that representatives of the first class, second class, third class, the commoners, they will come, sit and discuss the things with the king. It is like a constitutional parliamentary body, but because there was no constitution, the king was having the absolute powers, so kings never respected the States General. Let's take an example. Now in India, we say that parliament has to meet every 6 months. There has to be a session of parliament every 6 months in which member of parliament will ask questions to prime minister so that people of India can get better policies, right? So there had been an States General, but the kings in last more than 200 years have never called a meeting of States General. They said, no, we don't want to meet the people. We will make our policies and you can just convey it to their representatives. So though there was an institution, but it was never assembled. So though there was an institution called States General, but in the past more than a century, in the past more than a century, it had not been called. So king is claiming so much of absolute power that he do not even meet the representatives of the people. That was the extent of royal absolutism. Next main point. The aristocratic value system were still dominant. And therefore the high offices were monopolized by the privileged class. Next main point. The legal system had not been codified. कानून लिखे नहीं गए. They have not written any law. The legal system had not been codified. That means whatever the king wants, he can do. There is no limit to his power. The legal system had not been codified, and therefore the judicial system was arbitrary. Judicial system was arbitrary. ARBITRARY. Arbitrary and exploitative. Because no law has been written, no legal system has been codified. Now, how the judicial system can be good? Today, somebody comes and tells that this person has raped a girl. Thinks that, so what? Let him go, it's okay. Other day, somebody comes and say he raped a girl. Kill him right now. There is no provision of a system where you have a written law that if someone do something wrong, this is the punishment and this is the method the punishment is to be given. One day, king can say, oh, he looked at a girl, pluck his eyes. The other day, he raped a girl. That's okay, never mind. Today, I'm very happy. Let him go. So that was the judicial system. And to the extent to which people could have been exploited, I'm not going to dictate that point, but you need to know this. The feudal lords had the powers to issue arrest warrants. And if the farmers will not work according to their desires, they can issue the arrest warrant of farmers. And then the police is controlled by the feudal lords. The feudal lords themselves will become judges in these cases, and they can give any punishment. And to the utter surprise, rich people had the privilege to buy the arrest warrant of anyone with whom they had a problem. So if I have money, I can go and pay bribe to the feudal lord or to someone, and I can say, I want to arrest that man, but I want to arrest him myself. The feudal lord will issue a letter to me, which will be an arrest warrant of that person. I will go and arrest him. Now that was the system going on in France. I hope you understand how frustrated the people will be. कोई भी आता कुछ भी कर जाता है, किसी को भी मार जाता है. That is how it was going. Last political point. Such a centralized political system demanded a king with exceptional abilities. Demanded a king with exceptional abilities, but Louis 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 16th रोमन में लिखेंगे हम, right? क्या यार तंग करता रहता है, मानता है अपने तंग करने. Louis 16th, done. But Louis 16th was a weak and inexperienced ruler. Weak and inexperienced ruler. So obviously people will not respect him now. Had he been strong and experienced one, people could have still could have respected him कि चलो यार strong raja, he can do some things at least for saving our life and property, but the king is weak, so people do not want to now tolerate such a weak ruler. This is all about political system. Next is social causes. Social causes. Number one, the French social system was highly discriminatory, and exploitative. Because of which the common people suffered at every step. Second point, the French society was broadly divided into two groups. The French society was broadly divided into two groups, that is the privileged group which consisted of the first and the second estate, that is, remember I told you the first estate is clergy, that means the officers of church, and the second estate is nobility, that means the military officers of the king. They are the privileged class, the first and the second estate. The French society was broadly divided into two categories or two groups, that is the privileged group consisting of the first and the second estate, that is clergy and nobility, and the second group being the commoners, called the third estate. Next लिखो फिर, commoners called third estate, which consisted of the middle class. I told you, middle class was considered to be part of the commoners, but middle class is the rich class, which consisted of the middle class as well as the working class, the laborers, the peasants, all of them, they were part of commoners. Make a sub point. The privileged group, the officers of the church is clergy, officers of church. The privileged group constituted 2% of the total population. 2% of the total population, but controlled more than 35%. Controlled more than 35% of the national resources. Now imagine, only 2% people control 35% of national resources. कितनी disparity होगी society में? Next लिखो. Control 35% of the total resources. Next main point. However, the French middle class, was quite the French middle class was quite rich, and gave loans to the state. राजा भी उनसे उधार मांग लेता था, इतने अमीर थे. But they are so rich that they can give loan to state, but they are not given any importance. They are not the privileged people. So that's why they feel very bad, that why we are not being provided all those privileges which the nobility and the clergy enjoys. Right? This is it. This is social causes. Next, economic causes. Economic causes. First, we will write one separate statement, then we will start the causes. Write that statement in brackets along with the economic causes line. Most responsible in the immediate sense. In the immediate sense. That means out of all the factors, political, economic, social, cultural, and intellectuals, the most important cause is the economic cause. Why? When the taxes were increased, only then people revolted. So economic causes are the most immediate causes. Right? Now write. Economic causes. Number one, there was no trace of industrial revolution in France. There was no trace of industrial revolution in France till 1780s. Till 1780s. Britain में ना 1760s. In Britain 1760s industrial revolution started. Whereas now it's been good more than 20-30 years and France is still to understand what is industrial revolution. So as compared to Britain, now they are lagging behind. So you will always compare yourself with the neighboring countries, right? Subpoint. The French industries were still handicraft based. And the state had no interest. In economic progress. Second point. The French agriculture was still in the medieval stage. French agriculture was still in the medieval stage. Now, what we mean by medieval stage, that the land is controlled by either church or by the nobility, and common people work like landless labor, right? The French agriculture was still in the medieval stage. Subpoint. Most of the land was owned by feudal lords. Most of the land was owned by feudal lords and church. Most of the land was owned by feudal lords and church, and the agricultural infrastructure did not exist. Now, what is agricultural infrastructure? Provision of irrigation and things like that. right? So nobody invested to improve agriculture as well. You know, there was another thing now which I'm not dictating, but you should know. If I am a feudal lord, that means I am the owner of the land, and you are farmers, you work on my land. So land is mine, produce in mine. You just work on my fields, and I can give you not salary but only food to eat. That is the plight of common people, landless labor. You work on my land, land is mine, produce is mine. You can at best get what? Food, and that too not 2 square meal a day, right? Something that with which you can only have bare minimum existence. You want me to repeat the last line? The last line was, and even the agricultural infrastructure did not exist. So what I was telling you, that the feudal lords were the owners of the land, the poor peasant, they work on the land belongs to lord, the produce belongs to lord, and the workers get only and only what? Simple food to eat. Now, I am a feudal lord, this land belongs to me. So if today I feel like that I want to go for hunting, and if let's say I am hunting a deer or a rabbit, and that rabbit comes into the field, I will come on my horse running behind that animal, and I can destroy the entire crop. But the blame is yours. It's not my blame. I need my crop. I don't know what you will do now. This is feudal privilege. All right, next, third point. Trade and commerce in France. Trade and commerce in France was quite underdeveloped. Where there is no agriculture, where there is no industry, how can there be trade and commerce? Trade and commerce was quite underdeveloped, and the most prominent evil in this case was the guild system. Guild system. Most prominent evil in this case was the guild system. Dekho, let's try understand something which will also help you draw a very broad like comparison between European and Indian system. And you know, in exam they ask very specific question on guilds as well. So what is a guild system? It says that let's say we are the makers of perfumes, right? We make perfumes. Now we make a guild of perfume makers. What is the role of this guild? It says that we are 20 people who are involved in making perfume in this geographical area, right? Now no new person can be allowed to make perfume. By doing this, they are denying the right to others to start. Exactly, it is Shreni system, right? They are denying the right to others to enter into the same occupation, by way of which they are trying to create a monopoly. Now, if they create monopoly, they will defy the logic of demand and supply. How will they defy the logic of demand and supply? If there is a lot of demand of the perfume in the market and they intentionally reduce the supply, the prices will escalate and they will make more profit. That means they are not just denying right to other people to do the same occupation or profession, they are also befooling the customers and making lot of profit by creating a artificial scarcity of the goods. Then because they have created a monopoly, the perfumes are to be made from some sort of raw material. Let's say in past they were made from the flowers, right? Now there are people who grow flowers, the agricultural people, because they have made a lobby, the guild, they will negotiate with them that we will not buy flowers if you will not give these flowers at this particular rate. So that means they will pay less to other occupations but create profits for them. This is one thing of the guild system, and that is why trade and commerce is not growing. Now this is in context of France that I was telling you. Now there is something in your old NCERT of ancient India, which is R.S. Sharma sir's NCERT. This NCERT tells us various functions of guilds during Gupta age in India. Gupta age in Indian history, ancient India, and they tell us what were the functions of guilds. So guilds, they were not just the traders associations, right? What I have just explained, they were not just traders association, they were training schools as well. Training schools. Now, why training schools? All the members of these guilds, right? Those who are involved in one particular occupation, they may hire a particular member who is best at making the same product, and the next of the siblings or the generations, the children of the existing members will be given training by this member. So they became the training schools as well, to train the next generation in the same occupation so that they can maintain the monopoly, and the method of making the same thing must be kept secret. Outsiders must not come to know that how we make this product which is in great demand. So the guilds became the training schools as well. Now the guilds also acted as banks. How? They charge some basic amount as membership fees, so they collect the membership fees. Now when they collect the membership fees, they give an option to the traders that if you make lot of profit and you want to keep it safe, you can deposit your profits with us, and out of these profits, if others need any loan, we can give them loan on friendly interest rates, easy interest rate. Some of this interest can be paid to those who have deposited the money, other will be kept with the banking system of the guild, which will support the training schools. So the guilds were not just traders associations, they were the training schools. They also acted as banks in ancient India. Now add one more function. They had the right of mint. That means if you are an influential guild, you can make your own coins as well, which will be in circulation. Right? Now, as a traders association, it will make rules and regulations for that trade. So they are administrative bodies as well. They make the rules and regulations for that particular occupation or trade. So they become administrative bodies as well. And they can punish their members if they do not follow the same rules and regulations. That means they have administrative as well as judicial powers. Now that they have the administrative and the judicial powers, they are rich, resourceful people. So they are invited by the kings to give advice on economic policies as well. Pratham Kulika, the head of Shreni. Pratham Kulika were the head of Shreni. So that is why the kings used to call different heads of different guilds to give advice. If you take example of today, when the finance minister is to make the budget, he or she meet all the heads of the industries so that they can get some special understanding of the economy. Similarly, the kings in ancient India used to meet the guilds. That means they played advisory role to king for economic purposes. Now that was the most comprehensive role of guilds, and it is given in old NCERT in different pages in different chapters at different pages. I have brought it together. Economic factors. Next is taxation system. Taxation system was highly unscientific and irrational. Unscientific and irrational. Unscientific and irrational. Now, why it is unscientific and irrational? Let's make a subpoint to it. Subpoint is the commoners paid income tax and wealth tax. Income tax and wealth tax, while the privileged classes were exempted of all taxes. कितना ही नलायक सिस्टम है ना, जो बहुत रिच हैं वो टैक्स ही पे नहीं करते, जो गरीब हैं वो इनकम टैक्स पे करते हैं. So that's irrational, unscientific system of taxation. Next point. Sub point agla. The common people, this is a sub point. The common people were to pay other taxes as well. Other taxes as well, like ABC कर दो. Like number 1, TITHE. 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 Hyphen का लिखो. 10% tax paid to church. 10% tax paid to church. Number 2, GABEL. GABE. GABELLE. GABEL. What is GABEL? GABEL is salt tax. नमक पे कर लगा दिया गया. Next main point. There was no system of budget. There was no system of budget. Now, what is the meaning of no system of budget? It means when we make budget, now what we say, this is what we can earn, this is what we will spend, and this is what we will save. Right? That's budget. In France, there was no concept of making budget. The king, the nobility, the clergy, they were so spendthrift. They will keep spending money. Even if the equal amount of taxes cannot be collected, then they will take loans. Now, that was the problem, that there is no system of budget. I will dictate this line, put hyphen. Instead of managing the expenditure, of the state, managing the expenditure of the state as per the income, comma, the shortfall was bridged by loans. The shortfall was bridged by loans. और ये loans इसलिए नहीं लिए जा रहे. The state is not taking loans to help the people or to do welfare of the people. It is being done so that the king and his officers can live a life of luxury. जो राजा ना लुई 16th, इसकी वाइफ थी मैरी. Mary was such a spendthrift woman. If you believe me, like if she would have been today, तो वो ऐसी दिखती होती तुम्हें, that in morning she need a LV bag, in evening she need a Burberry bag, और next morning she need a Gucci bag. उसको हर रोज कुछ नया चाहिए. And she will never repeat the bag and the dress and the shoes ever in her life. इतना खर्चा कराती है राजे का. And she is so insane woman. एक बार what happened, France में food crisis हो गए. When the food crisis came, the poor women with their crying kids, they came to the palace and they said to the queen, we have no breads. Means we have no roti to eat, no breads. She said, eat cakes. उसको यही नहीं पता कि केक तो इतना एक्सपेंसिव होता है, वो गरीब बंदा खा ही नहीं सकता. उसको लगा केक तो आराम से मिल जाते हैं, मेरे फ्रिज में तो 100 पड़े होते हैं रोज. So people said, we have no bread. She said, eat cakes. And you know, the French women were so angry, they brought her to the street. दिखा किथे है तेरा मोनिकास, निक बेकर है ना, वहीं पे ले आया उसको, ऐसे पकड़ के दिखा माँ कहाँ पे है. चलो नेक्स्ट पॉइंट. लास्ट पॉइंट है ये इकोनॉमिक्स में. द लग्जूरियस लाइफस्टाइल ऑफ द रूलर्स. The luxurious lifestyle of the rulers and the officers and the constant involvement of France in the wars. कोई अमेरिकन वॉर में चला जाता है, कोई 7 year वॉर लड़ने चला जाता है, फालतू में दे कीप देमसेल्फ इन्वॉल्वड इन अननेसेसरी वॉर्स. कांस्टेंट इन्वॉल्वमेंट ऑफ फ्रांस इन वॉर्स pushed the French economy pushed the French economy to a point of collapse. Done. इतने खर्चे करोगे, इतनी लड़ाइयां लड़ोगे, इकोनॉमी कोलैप्स कर जाएगी एक दिन, इसीलिए तुम्हें टैक्स लगाने पड़ेंगे. नेक्स्ट, religious factors. Religious factors for French Revolution. Religious causes. Number one, the majority religion of France was Catholic faith. Catholic faith, but by the middle of 18th century, the traditional purity of Catholic faith, Catholic faith had ended, and several evil practices entered the church. Second point, the clergy itself was divided. The clergy, clergy, itself was divided into two groups. That is, clergy into two groups, that is higher and lower clergy. जो higher clergy है ना, वो it is like that Pandit ji of the temple who will not do anything in temple but get all the money, and the lower clergy is like that small Pandit ji who will come to the temple early in the morning, do all the things but get minimum salary, right? So the high clergy is very fortunate, very, very privileged. Lower clergy is exploited. So even they will expose the wrongdoings to the people and provoke them to revolt. So the concluding line is, the lower clergy which was discriminated against by the higher clergy, was full of discontent, and therefore they sided with the commoners. On the eve of the revolution. Now we have done religious causes. Next is intellectual causes. Or what we can say, role of philosophers. Intellectual causes or role of philosophers. Number one, France was blessed with great philosophers like Montesquieu, Voltaire and Rousseau. अब स्पेलिंग तो सबके आती होंगे, होप. Montesquieu, Voltaire and Rousseau. Subpoint, they exposed the evils from which the French society and polity suffered. अगला सब पॉइंट, their writings and speeches attracted the masses, and the awakening created by their efforts intensified the pain of suffering, for the common people. कोई तुम्हें रोज आके बोले लुट गए तुम, बर्बाद हो गए तुम, मार दिया तुम्हें तो कुछ नहीं बचा, रोज तुम्हें कोई बोले, तुम्हें ज्यादा दुख होगा. कोई तुम्हें ना बोले ना, तुम फिर भी चलता है यार, सबके साथ ही होता है. बट कोई रोज आके बोले ना, फिर तुम्हें बड़ा दुख होना शुरू हो जाता है. दैट्स एग्जैक्टली व्हाट हैपेंड. दीज फिलोसफर्स कॉन्स्टेंटली हैमर्ड on the minds of the people that you are being unnecessarily exploited. This is not the way the human should be treated, right? So next subheading for the philosophers, next subheading is critical estimation of the role of philosophers, critical estimation of the role of philosophers, like how important the role did they play in the coming of this French Revolution. So introductory line, MVR, I hope you understand who are MVR. Montesquieu, Voltaire, Rousseau. MVR played important role but it was indirect and remote. Second point, the French Revolution, in fact, was an outcome of the sufferings of masses, at the hands of the degenerated institutions and the evils in the politico-administrative, socio-religious and the economic lifestyle. Next main point, in the absence of these evil practices, the speeches of the philosophers would have fallen on deaf, DEAF, ears. कोई ना उनकी बात सुनता. If there would have been no problems, nobody would have bothered what they are saying, what they are writing. Last point, the French Revolution was to happen. Sooner or later. It was to happen, whatever was the situation, it had to happen. The French Revolution was to happen sooner or later, comma, the teachings of the philosophers acted as catalyst. The teachings of the philosophers acted as catalyst by intensifying the pain of the the pain of the sufferings of common masses. अब लिखो टीचिंग्स ऑफ फिलोसफर्स, ये अलग से एक टॉपिक भी है हमारे लिए, राइट? टीचिंग्स ऑफ फिलोसफर्स। सबसे पहले मोंटेस्क, अब मोंटेस्क भाई के बारे में लिखो। ही बिलीव दैट absolute monarchy is the mother of all evils. But it means is if there is no democracy, then there is only and only exploitation of the people, right? Mother of all evils, subpoint. Therefore he demanded that the idea of separation of powers, must be introduced and that the idea of popular sovereignty should be the norm of the society. What is the meaning of the idea of popular sovereignty? Popular sovereignty means that people should have the main power with them, not the members of parliament or the king, but the people should have all the powers with them. This is what we mean by popular sovereignty. Second main point is he was a great supporter of the idea of the natural rights of man, that state must respect the basic rights of every human being. Natural rights of man. Third point, he exposed the evils of centralized royal absolutism and shattered the myth of divine rights of king. In his book, the name of the book he wrote is Spirit of Laws. Next, Voltaire. He was a supporter of individualism. I hope you understand the meaning of the term individualism, that every individual is important and everyone should have equal rights. He was a supporter of individualism and strongly believed in the idea of liberty, that people should have freedom, in the idea of liberty. Sub point. He laid great emphasis on freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and expression. Number 3, second main point or third, whatever it is. His main focus was on the evils of church. Evils of church, hyphen. He condemned the church. He condemned the church as a den, D-E-N, as the den of superstitions. Right? Next, Rousseau. Now, he is one philosopher on whom we can expect a bigger question. So we will write a bigger note on Rousseau as compared to this one, the two others, and then another very important ruler who is not French, but we need to know about his ideas for enlightenment. As I said, now I will dictate all together. So we will write Rousseau and then Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher. And after that, I will give you a small note on Romanticism and skepticism. Chalo, Rousseau. Next is Rousseau. Roussseau. He was the greatest philosopher. Associated with the idea of romanticism. Which came as a reaction to the idea of enlightenment. Now, what is this clash that his ideas were as a reaction to enlightenment? This I will tell you when I will help you write about romanticism. Abhi we are just writing about Rousseau, so don't worry, I will explain that as well. Second point, he was against the idea of individualism, and instead he emphasized on supremacy of community, oblique the idea of or the idea of collectivism. Next, third point. He emphasized that the interest of the individual can be sacrificed for the larger common good. I will explain him on the board as a story, but first let me complete the dictation part. Next point. Usually the philosophers of 18th century focused on logic and reason, scientific outlook, critical thinking, comma, analytical approach and application of wisdom. Application of wisdom, but Rousseau used emotional appeal to awaken the masses. Awaken the masses. Make a subpoint and write a statement in quotes. He appealed to the hearts. He appealed to the hearts rather than the minds. He appealed to the heart rather than the mind. Science you can understand by applying your mind. Emotions you can understand by applying your heart. So Rousseau appealed to heart and not to mind. Whereas Voltaire, Montaigne, they appealed to your mind and not to your heart. They were talking about scientific ideas. Next, his ideas can better be comprehended. His ideas can better be comprehended by examining his two prominent works. By examining his two prominent works. दो किताबें इसकी बहुत important हैं, though he wrote so many books, but two of the books are very, very prominent. Let's talk about them. Two prominent works, that is A and B. Number one is Discourse on Origin of Inequality. Discourse on Origin of Inequality. It was in 1754 that this work was published. 1754, 1754. Now what he told in this hyphen, in it he explained two types of inequalities. Two types of inequalities, that is 1 and 2 कर दो, यहाँ 2 stars लगा लो, whatever you can do. That is, first is natural inequality. Natural inequality, comma, which is natural inequality, which is an outcome of natural differences. Natural differences, but is functional in character. And therefore not an exploitative idea. Therefore not an exploitative idea. Now let's try understand what he's telling us. He says there is some kind of inequality. Let's take an example between the men and the women. But don't take it as an inequality where men should be seen as superior or women should be seen as inferior, or man should be seen as physically more stronger than the women. What you have to understand, yes, nature made men and women different. They have different reproductive systems and organs. Now that there is a difference created by the nature, there is some sort of inequality between the men and the women. But look at it, how functional it is. Had this difference not been created, how could you have conceived babies and the world would have moved? Now, how can the two different roles which are equally important can be discriminated one over the other? Like men are superior and women are not. How can you say this? Both play equal role in the maintenance of the family and whatever you think about. If you say that men work outside and women take care of families, then that domestic labor should also be reckoned. Either you pay to someone or your wives take care of it. That role which they play should be equally respected. Concept clear hoga ye wala? What is natural inequality? that men and women, even though created different by nature, but there is no idea of discrimination or exploitation. It is that it is very functional. Both play very important role. And you know, one thing I was reading, and it is so very true. Otherwise, we should all know this, right? They said that men need to understand that they are not physically strong when compared to women. Had nature created men stronger than women, nature would have given the responsibility to deliver babies to men. It is such a painful process. Men will die of the pain. That means nature created women more strong and having the power to endure more pain than the men. Am I right? सही बात है ना? ये तो नेचर ने तो सारी पावर ही फीमेल को दी थी, मेल ने तो ऐसी हवा कर दी. And you know one more thing, there is another thing, very popular saying. You should write that saying somewhere on side of your page. A girl is never born. A girl is never born. She is made. ऐसे ही होता है ना, लड़की पैदा थोड़ा होती है, तुम उसे लड़की बनाते हो. बेटा ये नहीं पहनना, बेटा यहाँ नहीं जाना, बेटा इस टाइम बाहर नहीं निकलो. भाई को कोई नहीं रोक रहा होता. So you teach girls unnecessary things and made them vulnerable in the society. That is why girls are not born, they are made. सारा दिन डांटते रहते हैं उनको. You know, the Scandinavian countries, they made an experiment in early 2000s. They said, bring the children to the school. Let's not talk about genders. Let's not talk about being boys and girls. Nothing like that. Let them study for next 3-4 years together. In the 5th year, after being in school for 5 years, one fine day, they brought all the boys and girls together and asked them, what is your favorite color? 90% of the boys said pink. And the girls were blues, blacks, and browns. And when they offered them toys, 70 and 80% boys picked up Barbies and the girls were playing with guns. So that is how you change the mindset of boys and girls. I remember while I was a child, my dad took me to a toy shop, me and my sister. And she was looking for things, I don't know what. मेरे को एक डॉल बड़ी अच्छी लगी, मैंने उठा ली. मेरे पापा ने मुझे इतना डांटा ना, हम तो गुड़िया ना खेलेगा, शर्म नहीं आती तेनू, उधर देख की पे तेरे वास्ते. एंड इट वाज लाइक, फिर क्या हो गया यार, अगर मैं डॉल से खेलूंगा तो क्या हो गया, अगर बड़ा होकर मैं ऐसे भी आ गया तो क्या हो गया. पता नहीं मेरे पापा को उसमें कितना गुस्सा आया था. मुझे कुछ नहीं मिला, डांट पड़ी बस, तेनू कुछ नहीं मिलना, चल उधर. So they made the mindsets. But then there is a fact to it. The girls should also respect this. Had there been no J.S. Mill, no Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the men first took up the cause of the women. So women should also be thankful to the men. Chalo, next likho. Natural inequality, outcome of natural differences, which is functional in character and results in no exploitation. Second is artificial inequality. Artificial inequality, which is an outcome of material progress, that is the division of society between rich and poor. I am rich, I can do anything. Poor people are denied so many facilities. That is how artificial inequality comes into being. He says that what happens, few clever people first come and own up the property and deny right of equality to others, and then starts the discrimination. He is preparing the background for Karl Marx to come. Right? Next paragraph. Just change the paragraph. He believed that excessive materialism is the root cause of the sufferings of the masses. And therefore he emphasized on back to the nature. Excessive materialism is the root cause of the sufferings of the masses, and therefore he emphasized on back to the nature. Let's live the very basic life. Excessive materialism, to run after money and nothing else. Now first book is done. The first book is Discourse on Inequality, in which I have explained two things. Now the second book. The second book is Social Contract. Social Contract, 1762. 1762. It was the greatest work of Rousseau. He is very popular for this work. Greatest work of Rousseau, in which he explained the origin of state. In which he explained the origin of state. Next point. He emphasized that in the beginning of human life, the institution of state was absent. The institution of state was absent, and the community managed its own affairs. But with the growth of population, there emerged conflicts. And the community elected one of its member as king, who exercised his authority for the welfare of people. Subpoint. He believed that the community enjoys the right to overthrow the exploitative regime. Community enjoys the right to overthrow the exploitative regime. Next main point. He was democratic in outlook. And was a great supporter of the idea of popular sovereignty. Make a subpoint to this. He condemned royal absolutism. And made a very popular statement. Ab statement को quotes में लिख दो. Put it in quotes. Man is born free. But everywhere he is in chains. So man has to break these chains and live a life of contentment. This is what he believed. Right? Concluding line. Significance of Rousseau can better be understood. In the words of Napoleon. Napoleon the Great, who then ruled France after French Revolution, about whom we will be discussing in the next class. What did he say? Write it in quotes. Had there been no Rousseau, had there been no Rousseau, there would have been no French Revolution. Had there been no Rousseau, there would have been no French Revolution. So quite comprehensive a note for Rousseau now we have. Similarly, we will write one note on Kant, K-A-N-T, Kant, a German philosopher. I-M-M-A-N-U-E-L, Immanuel. I-M-M-A-N-U-E-L, Kant. I-M-M-A-N-U-E-L, Immanuel Kant. First point. His ideas carried the light of new thinking. Leave the man alone. It is Adam Smith, not Rousseau. All right. His ideas carried the light of new thinking to the doors of Germany. To the doors of Germany. Therefore, he is called the torch bearer of enlightenment in Germany. Torch bearer of enlightenment in Germany. Second point. He was a supporter of individualism. He was a supporter of individualism and believed that the institutions like church, society and state, exist for the benefit of individual. That means the church, the society, the state, they have only one purpose. They should help man live a better life. If they cannot ensure this, then we do not need these institutions. I need state so that state can protect me. I need society so that I can enjoy the companionship of people. I need church so that I can come in contact with people who are like-minded. Now, if the religion creates war, then I don't need religion. That is what he believes. Fine. Next point. He considered individualism as functional. Why it is functional? When you give liberty to every individual and you treat them equally, you give them the space or you encourage them to take the initiative and the society grows. If you keep telling people you cannot do this, you are subordinate to the state, you cannot experiment, then how the society collectively will grow? He considered individualism as functional because it encourages initiative. People take initiative when they are given freedom. Next. He was against excessive materialism. Excessive materialism is to run after money. Excessive materialism, and believed that the real progress of mankind is moral progress. Real progress of mankind is moral progress. Moralities should be taken care of, not money and material goods. Next point. He gave the idea of universal moral law, that there is a universal moral law, that it is applicable everywhere, wherever you go. If stealing is bad in one part of the world, it is bad in every part of the world. If somebody has done something for himself, that result should belong to him. Nobody should steal his product from him. Now this is universally moral, it is applicable everywhere. Now how can we say that state can take away the wealth of people without compensation? If state is doing it, it is morally not right. That means the state is wrong and people should revolt, right? There is a universal moral law. If it is applicable to people, it is applicable to the institutions which are made for the benefit of the people. Subpoint. The universal moral law is supreme. Universal moral law is supreme, and the law of state, जो state कानून बनाती है, and the law of the state are derived from it. See, nature made everyone equal. Now, if state gives us right to equality, why state give us right to equality? Because there is a universal moral law that all men are born equal. Now that state make law because of universal law, if there is a conflict between the universal law and the law made by the state, so the universal law should prevail, not the law of the state, right? And in case of conflict, the universal moral law must prevail. In case of conflict, the universal moral law must prevail. Now, what exactly he's saying? Subpoint, second subpoint. According to him, the universal moral law inspires and protects freedom. Inspires and protect freedom. Next main point. He considered state as a necessary evil. He considered state as a necessary evil. See, why state is evil? Because it will restrict your liberty. It will restrict your freedom. State will make laws that will restrict your freedom. So it is an evil. But if there is no state, then there is no protection. So it is necessary as well. So because we know it is an evil, we must give the state minimum functions, because it is bad, and if we give it more powers, it will become more bad. So better it is that give it the minimum functions. So that is what liberalism is all about. State is a necessary evil, so keep state with minimum functions, right? Next point. He was a supporter of democracy. He was a supporter of democracy and emphasized on the ideas of popular sovereignty, and separation of powers. This is it. Now we have to write a very short note on Romanticism and skepticism, with which we will come to an end of the class, because we can only understand the consequences and nature of French Revolution once we have done the time of Napoleon, which is part of French Revolution. So now we are starting with the idea of Romanticism and skepticism, so that we can better understand what is Romanticism and what is skepticism. First point, Romance से Romanticism. It represents the period from late 18th to mid 19th century. Number two, it was a reaction against enlightenment. It was a reaction against enlightenment and the 18th century rationalism. 18th century rationalism as well as physical materialism. Next, it emphasized on the imaginative, emotional, and spontaneous behavior of individual. Next, main features of romanticism are: number one, appreciation of the beauty of nature. Appreciation of the beauty of nature. Number two, preferring emotion over reason. Preferring emotion over reason. Now this is romanticism. Now next is skepticism. SCEPTICISM. SCE, some books put K as well. That's not wrong, but better it is C. SCEPTICISM. Right? Skepticism is also written with SKEPTICISM. It is an attitude of doubting knowledge. How can you say that only this thing is true and not the other thing? I am quite skeptic about it, right? To doubt anything and everything. It is an attitude of doubting knowledge claims. Subpoint: skeptics challenge the adequacy or reliability of any claim by questioning the basis on which the claims are established. This is skepticism. When they say that see, sun is stationary, earth is rotating, they became skeptic. How are you so sure? Prove your point. Then they gave so many points and finally they said, okay, now we agree. So it is again like, I doubt, therefore I think, and therefore I am. Right? Now, when I talk about enlightenment, I talk about scientific knowledge. When I talk about skepticism, I talk about you doubt anything and everything and then prove your point. When I talk about romanticism, they said, please forget about explaining everything scientifically. Let's live life simply on basis of emotions. Let's not always try to appeal to the mind. Let's appeal to the heart too. That is romanticism.